Welcome to the Sheffield As Bill Sees It meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Matthew H. from Buffalo, New York, who has come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we will open up the meeting for general sharing or if you'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Matthew. It's wonderful to have you here, and the floor is yours.
You, Andrew. Thank you to everybody that read and is being of service here. And thank you to the people that have their cameras on. It's tough to talk to a screen full of names, so I really appreciate that. I never know where I'm going when I talk, even though I have the reading I picked out. This reading out of the book, not so much the top part of it, but that our chief responsibility to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program, is something that's very near and dear to me because of my entry into Alcoholics Anonymous and looking back, the lack of adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous that I got coming around for a while, which I believe nearly took me out. My name is Matthew Hydock. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I really appreciated everybody that introduced themselves as a recovered alcoholic, because our book tells us to do that. Our book tells us that we've recovered. Because we get well here, and I think that's the first way I can give an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous to the newcomer or to someone that's been struggling for a while. I think it's important that we offer hope. A bunch of my friends and I talk about we're hope dealers in Alcoholics Anonymous. That our responsibility here is to offer something to the newcomer that they can bite into, that they can latch onto. Because if we don't offer them any hope and we just sit around and commiserate about our own problems as they're going on without any solution, we're selling them short, and we're not really giving what we do here, that we come spiritually alive, that we no longer suffer with this mental obsession, which puts us into this place to put the first drink into our mouth, and then we're off to the races when we start. So, a little bit about me. I'm from Buffalo, New York, USA. Today's my wedding anniversary. I married a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous 7 years ago today. Amazing life that we have together. She actually has one day more sober than me, so she'll always say to me, "Honey, you'll understand tomorrow. Don't worry about it." It's been a great ride. I went from a guy that, and I'm going to share a little bit about the end of my drinking because I think it's very apropos for this reading, right? But from a guy that could not wake up in the morning and take a drink of alcohol, to the life that I get to lead today as a result of the action taken in the 12 steps and men and women that gave an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous to me, it blows my mind. And I don't just get to be helpful in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a brother that suffered with alcohol. He ended up going to an AA meeting. He lives down in the south of the United States, and he went to an AA meeting, and they pulled out Bibles and started reading from Bibles, and wanted nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous because that was just way too far for him to reach, And I think that goes back to our chief responsibility to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of AA. AA says we can believe in any higher power. Anything, and we don't even have to believe, we just have to be willing to believe in something, right? But as of the last, I don't know, year, 6 months, my brother has opened up to me talking about spiritual matters with him, and the cool thing is I was down there 2 weekends ago with him. We went and saw there's an author, Eckhart Tolle, that writes a book that I love, that I turned him on to, and he found out that this guy was speaking in DC, so he bought tickets and took me to see this guy, and we have this spiritual connection, and whether it's someone in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, a family member, a friend, my chief responsibility is an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous, no matter what that is, right? If that's just that, hey, we're spiritual people and we do this thing, and these are the meditations I do, these are the books I read, like, to share that with my brother and then to see my brother's spirit come alive has been a joy in my life. But if I wasn't out here doing it, I just need to mute this person. Okay, sorry about that. If I wasn't out here doing it, if I wasn't living this life, I don't have an adequate presentation. So in order for me to have an adequate presentation, my life, my every day has to be involved in, if nothing more, at least steps 10, 11, and 12. If nothing more, right? Because I truly believe that's where I get to grow spiritually, and that's where my light gets to shine. You know, um, my drinking, the end of my drinking looked like I had owned several pizzerias for like 20 years. Um, I I started drinking before I even bought the pizzerias, but by the end of my drinking, I'm drinking a 1.75 liter of vodka a day. Um, I didn't draw a sober breath for many a years. I mean, I had stopped into Alcoholics Anonymous to visit several times. And this is my point about the adequate presentation of AA. I would come to a meeting and someone would, we would talk about whatever problem they were having for the day, and that would be the discussion for the meeting, was how to get over the babysitter not showing up, or how to get over whatever the problem that they felt they needed to bring to group therapy. We that's what we would talk about, and then someone would tell me, just don't drink no matter what. And I would leave the meeting and I would try to not drink no matter what. But I'm a guy that always drinks no matter what. I'm a guy that can't not pick up the first drink. I can put all kinds of self in front of that. I can even have judges and lawyers and women in front of that drink, and I'm going to drink. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. Our book tells us on page 24 that I won't be able to remember the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago that I'm without defense against the first drink. And then, I would go to another meeting, and I remember asking a lady about the 12 steps, and she said, "Oh, honey, don't worry about that. There's plenty of time for that. You didn't get sick overnight. You're not going to get well overnight. Just come to a bunch of meetings." And maybe that was her experience, but I challenged that maybe that was the experience of a woman that might have been a moderate drinker or a hard drinker and not the real alcoholic as described on page 21, because maybe she had the time to do that. But again, on page 24, it tells me within a week or a month I'm drinking again, that I don't have a defense against the first drink. And our book, it talks about our defense must come from a power greater than ourselves, right? And if the only way we know how to get connected to that power is a journey through the 12 steps, or at least entering into the 12 steps and starting to see that self is the problem through steps 4 and 5, I'm not going to awaken, and I'm going to drink again. Because on my own power, within a week or a month, I'm a ticking time bomb and I'm drinking again. So when I sponsor men, I know that I have no more power over their alcoholism than I have over my own, and I have none. So it's my responsibility as a sponsor to get them into the steps as quickly as possible and get them into that this is just me. If you do it different, your sponsor does it different, listen, God bless. All right? But I'm just saying, in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, Dr. Bob's sobriety date, June 10th, 1935. Do you know how many days he was sober when he was sitting at the bedside of Bill Dotson, alcoholic number 3? Guys, he was 16 days sober. 16 days doing 12-step work. 16 days in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this isn't made up by me. You can check the archives in Akron. You can check the archives all over the place. Within a month, maybe 6 weeks, they were sponsoring people. They had to. And we got away from, for some reason, the absolute necessity for the dire need for spiritual help immediately, and became some kind of self-help, group therapy type of thing for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous. So this is what the end of my drinking looks like. New York State Sales Tax Department has this thing: when you collect the sales tax from the customers, they want their money. And I must have missed that in business school, because I wasn't giving them their money, and I ended up getting in trouble, and I faced 7 felony charges. I lost the pizzerias. I didn't end up going to jail as a result of a great lawyer and a lot of money spent on that. But I lost everything in life. The house that I built with my own 2 hands was in foreclosure, and I'm living in that with electric on, maybe not. My wife at the time had left with the kids because I was just the book talks about a tornado roaring through the lives of others, right? I was a tornado in this poor woman's life for 14 years. My alcoholism was, and she fell in love with me. Why? Probably because her old man was an alcoholic too, and that's just what happens, right? So she lived her entire life with tornadoes. And I don't blame her for leaving at all. But now I'm end of my drinking. I lose the pizzerias. I get a job at one pizza chain here in town. And guys, I'm really good in the pizza business. Like I'm a phenomenal cook. I'm good at what I do. I can make pizzas like nobody. I'm a general in the kitchen. But I would drink. And I would lose that pizzeria job and I'd get a job with another pizza chain, work myself right up to top management and lose that job time after time. And finally, at the end of my drinking, I'd got a job with a guy that owned a kitchen and our deal was no drinking on the job. And I said, no problem, Brian, I promise. 2 weeks in, that promise was, he knows I drink vodka, but I think I could drink some malt. It's called Mike's Hard Lemonade here in the States. I don't know if you have that in the UK, but Mike's Hard Lemonade, it's a malt beverage that it's not real alcohol in my head back then, right? It's not vodka, right? It's not whiskey. It's not tequila. It's just malt. It's like beer, right? That's my thought then. So I start, bringing a 6-pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade to the kitchen and drinking that on the job. And eventually it just becomes vodka poured into a water jug with some Mike's Hard Lemonade mixed in, so it looks like lemonade, and I'm off to the races. And one day his dad comes in, and I didn't do something or I did something that upset him, and he fires me, and I end up back at the liquor store that day after the old man fires me, and I go home, and my buddy comes over to my house, the guy that I was working for, and says, dude, you put hands on my father. Like, what's the matter with you? And I said, Brian, I'm sorry. I was drinking at work and yada, yada. And he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out 3 weeks of my salary and says, dude, here, I want you to take this. I want you to go to Alcoholics Anonymous and I want you to get sober. If you go to AA, get sober over the next 3 weeks, apologize to my dad. You can have your job back. I love you. I want you working for me. You're great in the kitchen. I said, no problem, Brian. I'm going to AA today, right? But guys, the phenomenon of craving I had already kicked in. I'm home. I had stopped at the liquor store on the way home from work. I had the bottle of vodka. I had to finish the job, so I didn't go to AA then. I finished most of the bottle of vodka and I went to sleep. And I wake up the next morning with full intention of going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had been to AA before, but like I told you guys, there was a lack of adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just don't drink no matter what. Put the plug in the jug. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Don't worry about the steps. Things that just simply are not in our book. This is the kicker that I hear all the time, and it's misconstrued. And it's the terms one day at a time cannot be found anywhere in the first 164 pages of our book. And people would say to me, just don't drink today and you can always drink tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure exactly what page, somewhere from like 29 to 31, it says we must have no lurking notion that one day we can drink like normal people. So if someone's telling me just don't drink today, you can always drink tomorrow, they're leaving the door open for me to have a lurking notion that I can drink like normal people. Right? One day at a time is not in our book anywhere. It says we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Right? That's where I think they get it from, right? We're living this program. We're living this spiritual life. We're growing spiritually one day at a time. But I'm done. Dr. Bob, at the end of his story, says, if you're done drinking liquor for good and all, or if you want to be done drinking liquor for good and all, can I get a commitment from you that you don't want to drink anymore? Can you make that commitment to me today? And let's start working these steps, right? But that's not what I was getting when I went to AA. So I go to bed and I have a little vodka left and I wake up and I'm going to go to AA. And I look over and there's vodka in the bottle and the thought, no mental defense against the first drink. Oh, there's vodka left in the bottle. You can't go to AA if you still own alcohol. So I start drinking that little bit of vodka that's in the bottle. And instead of my car taking me to the AA meeting, my car takes me to outlet liquor store and I get another bottle of vodka. All right. I'm into the bottle. I start getting that terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair, right? Okay, I'm going to finish this bottle. I'm going to AA tomorrow. But the problem is, I don't know anything about the phenomenon of craving that when I put alcohol in my body, it triggers something in my body that demands I drink the rest of it. I don't know anything about this because I've never had an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody's ever talked to me about what an alcoholic is, that I have a mental obsession and a physical allergy, that I'm doomed to drink again. And when I start drinking, I can't control how much I drink. No one's ever given that to me. Haven't heard it. Maybe someone said it. Maybe I was drunk in a meeting and someone said it and I just didn't hear it. I don't know. But it wasn't the banner statement at an AA meeting. Someone wasn't talking about what alcoholism is. So I drink most of that bottle, pass out. What happens? You can guess. Next morning, wake up, full intention of going to AA, but there's vodka left in the bottle. Back to the liquor store. Day 3, same thing. But this time, after I get home from the liquor store, Brian, the guy that told me to stay sober for 3 weeks and he'd give me my job back, Brian came by my house to do a wellness check to see how I was doing. And I was drunk. And I don't know how many of you guys have had somebody in your life that you cared about. Brian was a good friend of mine. Gave me a job when he knew that I was at the end of self, right? Brian was a good friend of mine. And he came to my house, and the look of disgust in his eyes when I was drunk is enough to kill you. And he's like, dude, what is the matter with you? You couldn't even stay sober 3 days. I said, Brian, I didn't stay sober 3 minutes after you left. The only time I wasn't drinking was when I was sleeping. He's like, dude, I'm done with you. Don't ever call me. Leave me alone. Stay out of my life. And he left. Guys, it's October. That's October of 2011. That's October of 2011. My favorite holiday in the States is Thanksgiving. I love cooking. So, when I owned the pizzeria, we would have 50, 60 people over my house. I would cook a huge meal. I wouldn't let anybody bring anything because I don't want you bringing your sweet potatoes with marshmallows in them or something weird, right? I'm cooking. And I would cook, and the joy for me comes out of seeing people sitting at the table, shoveling food into their face, just quiet, enjoying my creation, right? Well, it's October and Thanksgiving is in November, and I start to think about, at the time I have this 84-year-old little Polish grandmother that she used to do Thanksgiving, and it's become my tradition because she can't do it anymore. She doesn't talk to me anymore as a result of my alcoholism. My children don't talk to me anymore. The 50 some odd people that were at my house for years and years for Thanksgiving, they aren't coming over. They're not talking to me. Even if they could, I don't have the money to purchase the food. And I start doing this little experiment with sleeping pills and vodka. If 2 knock me out, what will 4 do? If 4 knock me out, what will 8 do? And on the night of my last drink, on page 150, I think it's 152, 151 or 152 in the book, it talks about that you will get to a place where you can't imagine life with or without alcohol, and you'll wish for the end. Guys, I really wanted to stop drinking. I wanted to be done. I didn't want to hurt another woman. I didn't want to disappoint another parent. I didn't want to disappoint my little old Polish grandmother. And I couldn't pull it off. And I didn't understand what alcoholism was. I just thought I was making poor choices, and how could I choose to hurt these people? So on the night of my last drink, I decided, that's it, I'm done, I can't do this. And I took a half a bottle of sleeping pills, and I was just going out. Vodka, oblivion. And then I started thinking about my kids. I made myself sick and threw up all those pills. And then I passed out. And I woke up the next morning, and I look over, and there's vodka left in the bottle. And I know I'm drinking again. and I don't know what to do. For whatever reason, I didn't pick up the vodka, and I picked up the phone and I called this shrink that I used to go see when I owned the pizzerias, and I told him what happened. And he said, "Why don't you come to my office?" I said, "Lou, I don't have any money." He said, "I don't care. Come down to my office." And we sat and we talked for a while, and we talked about he said to me, he goes, "Matt, we've talked about the abuse that you suffered at the hands of your parents, and we talked about you being molested when you were a kid, and we talked about all that stuff." And he goes, "I don't think any of that's the problem." He said, "I think you're just an alcoholic and you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous." And I said, "I've been to AA, it doesn't work. I've been to AA, it doesn't work." Because I tried 90 meetings in 90 days, and I tried not to drink no matter what. And I tried to put the stupid coin in my mouth, and if it melted, I could drink. Like all the stupid stuff I heard at AA. I tried not just to drink today with intention of drinking tomorrow. It doesn't work. AA doesn't work. And he said, "I'm sorry, that's all I have for you." I went down to my car. Now, guys, I don't say this to be boastful. When I owned the pizzerias, I had 3 top-end motor vehicles, 2 motorcycles, a boat, a RV trailer, a gorgeous house that I built on a couple acres of land in the suburbs of Buffalo. And I walked down to my car from this guy's office, and I'm getting into a 1997 Grand Am. The bumper's held on by sheet metal screws because when I was drunk one night, I hit a country mailbox and ripped the bumper off. There's a hole in the floor pan. There's no heat in the car. It's late December, early January of 11, 12. In Buffalo, it gets pretty freaking cold in December and January. I see Mary from Iowa nodding. She understands. She knows. And I just start crying and I'm punching the steering wheel because I know AA does not work. I know it in my heart. But I call a guy that I knew from Alcoholics Anonymous and asked him where a meeting was. And I go to a meeting. That right after I leave the guy's office, I go to a noon meeting. And I sit down and I sit through all the stuff we read at the beginning of the meeting. I honestly think it sounds like Charlie Brown's mom to the newcomer. Wah, 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 wah. Doesn't understand anything. I don't know if the UK knows about Charlie Brown, but his mom, they didn't have a voice. It was just wah, 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 wah. And they say the beginner's room's upstairs, so I go up to the beginner's room. And the woman running the meeting, I mean, guys, I'm detoxing. I haven't had alcohol in my body for 24 hours, and that's the first time it's been like that in probably a year and a half. She says, "Okay, who's got the problem?" And the first woman raises her hand, and she's got this cat that won't use the litter box. And she just can't figure out how to train her cat. So we go around and we have a little PetSmart meeting and offer suggestions on how to get your cat to use the litter box. And someone suggests that she gets a spray bottle, and when the cat squats, squirt the cat with the spray bottle. And someone talks about taking it for some training somewhere. And someone talks about moving the litter box to a different area. Maybe the cat's having difficulty in that area, whatever. So for the first half hour of the meeting, we talk about cat urine. And we get done, and Bob has a snowblower that won't start, and he's so frustrated about it. He just needs to talk about it. And guys tell him that, "Hey, have you cleaned the points? Hey, there's this great errands dealer over on Kenmore Avenue. Why don't you take it there? He's awesome." Next half hour, we talk about snowblowers. Then we get up, and they hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer, pass a basket, get my dollar, and I leave. And I get down to my 1997 Grand Am. And I reach in my pocket, and I have, I don't know if it was $7 I had left or $12 I had left. I think it was $12 I had in my pocket. And to me, it's a sign because my handle of vodka, very cheap plastic bottle of vodka, plastic cap, $11.86. I got $12. I also know that I have some Vicodin in the medicine cabinet, and I'm going home and I'm going to check out. I can't do this anymore. And AA does not work. Because I know how to train my cat or start my snowblower, but I don't know how the frick to get sober. So I'm headed home. And I slightly touched on talking to the shrink about abuse I suffered from the hands of my parents when I was a kid, physical abuse. My parents were both heavy-handed. I don't know why, but I called my father. I know why. My dad had been sober for, let's say, I think he's 35 years sober now. So if we back, he was 23 years sober at the time when I called him, right? And he was living down in Oklahoma. And I called him and I said, hey, Glenn, I didn't call him Dad. Hey, Glenn, I went to an AA meeting and I'm trying to get sober. And this is what happened. We talked about cat urine and snowblowers. And he said, yeah, that's not AA. I'm sorry you went to that. That's not AA. That's people that are too friggin' cheap to get a therapist that want to come dump their problems on the table. That's not AA. That's not what we do here. But I think my dad knew he couldn't 12-step me. So he says, I'm going to send you a link to a speaker. I want you to listen to this speaker. And he sends me a link to this guy, Chris R. out of Ingram, Texas. And I listened to this talk. And guys, for the first time in my life, someone in Alcoholics Anonymous talked about the phenomenon of craving and the mental obsession. Talked about how he felt and thought and how he drank, and I identified. And then he talked about being a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous that doesn't suffer with alcoholism anymore. He still has alcoholism, but he doesn't suffer with it anymore. And he offered me hope. He offered me an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous from a CD that was recorded in 1998. And I called my father back and told him, that's amazing. I wish I could find AA like that. I wish I could talk to that guy. And he said, he's a good friend of mine. I'll text you his number, give him a call. So I call the guy up and he's like, buddy, I'm at work. Let me punch out. I'll call you back. And I'm like, yeah, this guy's calling me back, right? As a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous, Chris knew his chief responsibility. He called me back. Talked to me for about 2 hours, gave me an undeniable case of alcoholism over the phone, painted me into a picture, into a corner that I couldn't deny that I had this thing. And he told me to go to another meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and find a man that had a beat-up big book that was talking about God in the steps and ask him to sponsor me that day. So I went to a meeting and there were two guys in the room talking about God in the steps. And Rob became my first sponsor. And Rob didn't say, hey, buddy, just don't drink today. I'll catch you at a meeting tomorrow. Rob and Larry and Tony and two other guys said, hey, we're going to this restaurant. Would you like to come with us? I said, guys, I don't have any money. We didn't ask you that. Would you like to come to the restaurant with us? And they didn't sit there and talk to me about their divorce or their whatever. They pulled out the book of Alcoholics Anonymous and read the doctor's opinion and Bill's story with me. And they painted a picture of what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we talked about steps 1, and then they started talking to me about God. And I said, hold on, I don't want to hear anything about that. And Rob said to me, well, that's unfortunate because Alcoholics Anonymous won't work for you then. I'm like, damn, that's kind of rude. He goes, listen, you told me you tried to kill yourself last night. I'm not being rude. I'm telling you the truth. And they sent me home, and Rob said, why don't you go home and can you read from page 44 to the end of the chapter? Can you read that chapter? Can you commit to that? And can you commit to just not drinking today? Read that chapter and I'll come by your house tomorrow. I said, absolutely. And I go home and I read the chapter, and it's We Agnostics, for anybody that didn't know, page 44, right? Starts out, if when you honestly want to, you find you can't quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, check, that's me. You're probably alcoholic. And if that be the case, you're probably suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Only. That's it. Page 25, we have two alternatives. One, go on to the bitter end, blotting out the intolerable situation best we can, right? Drink and die, or drink and still live drinking, right? That's even worse. Or accept spiritual help. This we did because we were honestly willing to make the effort, right? My doorbell rings. Rob comes in. I'm watching Star Wars on TV. Original 1977 Star Wars. And it's the scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi is in his little hut. He just met Luke Skywalker for the first time. And he's in his little hut and he's telling Luke about the Force. And Rob starts talking. I'm like, hold on, Rob, this is my favorite scene. I mean, I must have seen this movie 1,000 times. I'm born in 73, guys. I'm a Star Wars nerd, right? And Rob starts talking. I said, hold on one second. Let me watch this scene and then we'll talk. And Obi-Wan tells Luke that the Force is this energy field that combines all living things, that creates everything, blah, 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 right? And the scene gets done. I pause the movie and Rob goes, do you like that idea? And I said, what? He said, the Force. Now, Rob's a Christian, right? But he didn't bring his Bible with him. He didn't come with holy water. He didn't, nothing, right? Rob's a Catholic. He's not pushing his stuff on me. And I said, yeah, it's a cool concept. He goes, could you use that as your higher power? I said, well, George Lucas made that crap up. And he said, it doesn't matter. And he took me to page 47 in our book. And he said, let's read this on page 47. It says, we need to ask ourselves one short question. Do you now believe? And I'm like, Rob, I already told you I don't believe. He goes, shut up. Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself? And we had a conversation about that, and I threw out the Big Bang Theory and all the science that I believed in and he said, okay, can you believe that maybe, just maybe, the Force initiated the Big Bang? That there was some kind of power before the Big Bang that made that happen? And I said, yeah. He goes, good, let's look at step 3. Guys, I'm 2 days sober. There's no writing assignments in step 1 and 2. And if your sponsor's having you do that, I get it. A lot of people have different ways of doing stuff. I'm not saying they're wrong. This is just my experience, right? My experience. He reads through pages 58 to 63 with me. He talks about the actor, the director. He talks about all that stuff. Talks about the keystone of your recovery, right? That we're building this arch, guys. The keystone, the stone at the top of the arch. That this idea that God is God and I'm not, or the Force is the Force and I'm not that power, that's the keystone to the rest of my recovery. And then he reads the 3rd step prayer with me and breaks it down. And some people get twisted up when I talk about this and we don't make deals with God. But Rob looks at the prayer and he goes, we read the prayer and he goes, doesn't this sound like some kind of deal with God? I'm like, yeah. It says, God, I offer myself to you to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Take away my difficulties so victory over them will bear witness, right? Bear witness means give an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous to the people that come after me. I'm going to bear witness to God's power if God takes away my difficulties. That's the deal I'm making with God in the 3rd step. That I'm going to go out, and after I work these steps, I'm going to shout from the rooftops that this higher power, this God, this Force, Yahweh, Buddha, whatever you want to call it, did this for me. I'm going to offer hope to the newcomer that we have a way out on which we absolutely agree. Doesn't seem like it at some meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that's what our book says, right? And we get down on my knees with this stranger. I met him 2 days ago or yesterday. And we hold hands, which I thought was kind of weird, right? I'm a straight guy. This is freaking weird, right? We hold hands and say this prayer, and I didn't have any effect from it. I just knew what I do doesn't work to stop drinking, and this guy seems happy, joyous, and free. And Larry and Tony and Billy, all the guys that took me out to that restaurant seemed happy, joyous, and free. The stories they told me, it sounded like they drank like I drank, but they don't anymore. They gave me an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Rob takes me to the bottom of the page after the 3rd step prayer, and it says, we're going to read this, and I'm going to give you some instructions on what your next assignment is. Guys, it says, next, we launched on a course of vigorous action. Guys, I'm a kid of this. I was born in the 70s, right? So the space shuttle taking off from Earth, I can wrap my head around that. Launching, right? 18,700 miles per hour. That's how fast it moves to get out of Earth's gravitational pull, right? Next, we launch. It means we don't screw around. We do it now, right? Right away. Got me busy. Told me to write a list of people I'm pissed off at. His name was first on the list. $2 weeks, 168 resentments, a fear inventory, a sex conduct inventory, a sex ideal. I wrote it all. 2 weeks and 2 days after I have my last drink, I sit with Robin Whitey and I do a fifth step for 6 hours. For the first time in my life, I'm free of all that crud. I'm trying not to swear. All that crud that rolls around in my head. They send me home for an hour to get quiet. They didn't tell me to go read Drop the Rock and work on my character defects. If I can fix my own character defects, then why didn't I do it already? Our 7th step says, God, I offer take all of me, good and bad. Take away the defects of character which stand in my way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Because I can't determine what's good and bad. Listen, I think my swearing is a character defect, but I still swear. And when I'm getting down and dirty with the big book with a new guy, and he's fresh off the streets and I drop an F-bomb, maybe God leaves it because it's useful to him. I don't know. But I don't work on my character defects. I go home, I get quiet for an hour. Have I done this work to the best of my ability so far? And I ask God to work on them while I do the rest of the steps. What do I got, 3 minutes left? I get a little passionate about this. I'm sorry, guys. I think that we have a life-saving program if someone knows what the program is. And if I've upset you, if you're a person that believes, I just need to go to the meeting and share my problems, stop. Please. Work the steps with someone who's recovered, please. So you can have a spiritual experience, so you can be a beacon of light in someone's life, so you can save somebody from suicide, so you can help them rekindle the relationship with their 3 children and their grandchildren. So they can get married to someone in Alcoholics Anonymous and have a beautiful life. So they can be a productive member of society. So they can sponsor other men or women and help other people. I have this book, and it's not AA-approved literature, but it's my daily reader. It's a Tau 365 book, and I. The cool thing about this book is I turned my brother onto it. I talked about my brother early in the meeting, and my brother now will text me or call me or say, hey, the reading today kind of sucked, or hey, what'd you think about this? You know what I mean? So I picked this topic, and then today's reading is this, and I'm going to, real quick, all right? Just read this real quick because it's really apropos for what we're talking about. Humility is good, but sometimes it is inappropriate. Self-cultivation in private is good, but sometimes it is also inappropriate. Why? Because if no one ever comes out to help others, to show that it is possible to be spiritual in modern times, then people will lose faith. When people go to hear a spiritual master, they do not come to hear self-deprecation. They go to see perfection. In the past, the masters would come down from the mountain to let the people see them. By going among the people, they reaffirmed the validity of spirituality. By walking among the masses, they inspired others to undertake self-cultivation. By helping those whom they encountered, they directly touched the lives of others. Self-cultivation and concentration on the divine is fine, but there are times that one should remember one's fellow beings. Guys, it is my responsibility to work with step 10 and 11 in my life. It's my responsibility to get up in the morning and do a meditation. It's my responsibility to do an inventory at night. It's my responsibility to have continued self-evaluation throughout the day in step 10. And then it's my responsibility to come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, to go to a detox or a jail, to speak at 8 o'clock in the morning from Buffalo, New York on a Zoom in England and tell people the truth. Give them an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's my responsibility. And if you're not doing it, you're abdicating your responsibility to God, to your fellow human beings, and to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're stuck, if you're like, I don't know how to do that, call me. I'll put my name and phone number in the message again with my email. Call me. Let's talk about it. Your responsibility as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous is to either work the steps and have a spiritual experience, or continue to work the steps and carry the message. Give an adequate presentation of Alcoholics Anonymous to the people coming up behind you. I love you all. I'm here to help. Thank you for my life.